Hi everybody, I wanted to do a little video on yardage. I get a lot of questions about how do you figure yardage on a piece of furniture. Well, first of all, if you're in business, you have to be very competitive with the yardage amounts because fabric can be expensive, as we know. Labor usually stays the same, but it's the fabric that can be, there's a variables in the fabric for the bottom line. So we have to be careful about how many yards of fabric that we order. So let's start. I have a lot of pieces in here that I want to show you and go over how I figure yardage. It's pretty straightforward, I think. So when you look at a chair like this, okay, the customer's going to change the back. By the way, it's just going to be a plain back. Right now, this is a stitched diamond tufted back. It's a manufacturer's trick. I would never do something like this. If we're going to do diamond tufting here at the shop, we would do real diamond tufting that the buttons are way in, and there's pleats at each button, or four. If you're looking at this button, there's 4 pleats from that button and 3 pleats from this button. They're actually folded pieces of fabric. But anyhow, so straight back. So when I look at a chair like this, I'll say 1 yard for the inside back. And then I look at the seat and I'll say that's another yard, that's 2 yards. So you can break it down. It'll be much easier to figure your total if you break the chair down like this. So then you look at your outside back and your arms, that's another yard. So up to 3 yards. And then the outside arms and the double welt, double piping is this. Okay, we need a little extra, is another yard. So I quoted out the customer 4 yards minimum. What that means is for solid fabric. So this is how I approach it. If they want a pattern, you have to add to that. So for instance, most upholstery fabrics are not heavy patterns and they're not large repeats. But of course, if you have a drapery fabric that you're using and it's a 36-inch repeat, of course that's going to up your yardage. So you can increase it almost 50% in a case like that. Okay, but we're only talking about plain fabrics here from now on. So let's move on to the next piece. I'm just going to put this one aside for now. We got a small wing chair here. We have a set, and this customer wants contrasting piping. And folks, contrasting piping, it always adds to the total fabric. Okay, so keep that in mind. But let's break it down again. So when I look at a chair like this, I'm talking 1.5 yards minimum for the seat cushion. Okay, another yard for the back, another yard for the outside back. So we're up to about 3.5 yards, and then your wings 4 yards. Then we're talking about the inside arms and the outside arms. So I estimated 6.5 altogether, 6.5 yards. Now a yard of fabric is 54 usually inches wide and 36 inches. It's not a square yard, so keep that in mind. So 6.5, she has 2 of them, so 13 yards. Then she says, okay, I want a contrasting piping. So what I did was, okay, let's figure out on a piping, when you have this much piping and you're going to be making the fabric, the piping with fabric as a contrast, on this particular job, you need 3 yards of fabric for contrast. But then I took down a little bit. I went down another yard though on the bodies because I don't need the piping for that. So I went down to 12 yards. So, but it's 15 yards total for this particular job. Okay? So let's go to the next job. So you have to be quick on your feet when you're figuring yardage, and you have to be accurate because you're competing against somebody else. If you're in business for yourself, you're competing against another upholsterer who could be figuring this out smart in a better way. So you really have to get used to the way I do it, breaking it down and then presenting it to the customer just like that. Then you look like an authority too. You really need to look like you know what you're doing. You can't be sitting there going, let's look at the chart. So this is the way I do it, and I wanted just to share that with you. So let's go on to the next one. So this is a very similar to the first one, except that we looked at, except this has a loose cushion, which you don't see right now, which we're replacing. But when you look at a chair like this, again, the seat cushion alone, that's 1.5 yards, okay? And then you got the 2.5, and then 3.5, and then the outside back, 4.5, and then the outside arms, 5.5, 5. I'm gonna say 6 yards for this piece, okay? Just break it down, break it out like that, and it's 6 yards minimum, and that's a solid fabric again. So let's go on to the next one. So this piece and this piece would be 6 yards. This has a loose cushion. It's a smaller piece of furniture with the loose cushion though. That added the 6 yards to that. So on this one here, if we just go with our rule, we have 1 yard here, let's go another yard for both inside arms, that's 2 yards. And for the outside arms and the outside back, that's another 2.5 yards, so we're up to 4.5. The piping, we want at least another yard, and the panels, so that's a 1/2 yard, so that equals 6. So 6 yards on that. So these are very conservative numbers. If you're not sure, you can always up it just a little bit, but keep in mind, the more you up your fabric and you're competing against somebody else, if you're a yard over or 2 yards, and folks, in this business, I've seen people on a chair like this say 12 yards, if you can believe that. That's double the amount that I'm saying, okay? That will add, in some cases, that's $100 a yard. That's $600 more for the job. So if you're coming in $600 under and you're as good as an upholsterer as that other person, you're going to get the job. So let's go to the next one. Well, this is our mate to the one I already looked at. So now this one is a bigger wing chair, as you can see when you put it up against this one. How much bigger? This is a very substantial wing chair. So we were at 6.5 on this. When I look at this chair with everything that's going on it, the loose cushion, the seat, the inside arms, the panels, it's got piping, a lot of piping, it's got a base wall that's going to go on it. So I'm looking at 8 yards on this. 8 yards. Okay, so I know that was quick. You can replay it, the video, over and over again just to learn yardages, but it's good not to go to that chart. Those charts that you see online, those yardage charts, are not good. They don't tell the story. It's better to do it the way I'm doing it, break it down, and you can't lose. Well, see you again.